of a delay, so I won't start right away. Um, are you based in Chicago?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, dope, dope, dope. Is that where you're from?
Well, I was born in Indiana, but I've been here most of my life. So back and forth.
Okay.
How about you? Where are you? You're in the Bay, right?
I'm in. Well, no, I'm from LA, and then I went to school in the Bay Area. So that's like my second home. But yeah, I'm back in LA now.
Okay, okay.
So, all right, it looks like we have people jumping in. Welcome. We'll get started in just a second. Hopefully, there's a lot of first timers. We got a really dope discussion lined up today. I'm excited to introduce this gentleman in just a second, but I'm gonna wait a minute or two for more people to come in. So if you're joining us from Periscope or BeatStars Twitch or YouTube, we're live on all their platforms, but primarily I think most people go to their Twitch channel. But no matter where you're tuning in from, welcome. Hopefully we do have a lot of first timers in our regulars as well. Let me turn on the chat so I can see people chiming in. For those that don't know, what we'll do is I'll have some questions myself, and then at the end, you guys can ask questions by simply typing in the comment box. So no matter where you are tuning in from, if you type in the comment box, I will be able to see it. And then I will ask our guests some questions. So let me go ahead and introduce our special guests. We have Andrew Barber, who is the founder, creator of Fake Shore Drive, a name I've been familiar with for a pretty long time, probably since I've been in music. When did you start Fake Shore?
2007.
Yeah, so I jumped in music in 2008, and I was familiar with the name. Then. But Andrew, thank you for joining us, man. Appreciate you.
No, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you. It's a great honor to be here. So I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so 2007. So 2007, we're in 2020, obviously. So it's 13, 14 years. Was that your first jump into the music industry?
Yeah, I mean, I had always been a fan. I'd been a lifelong fan of music, primarily always of hip hop. Hip hop since probably 87, 88.
Mm-hmm.
I was very, very young. And always wanted to get in the industry, but it was very difficult. I would say it was very difficult to get in the industry unless you were in New York or LA, maybe even Atlanta or certain cities with a big, or cities with like an independent, thriving independent scene.
Right.
It wasn't easy to get into business until the blog era. I feel like that made it easier, and then with social media and things like that, it's made it easy. Like pretty much anybody can get in now, but
right.
It was difficult. I was knocking on doors trying to, faxing my resume to record labels because that's what you had to do back then before you could track people down online. And I wasn't getting anywhere, so I really just started my own thing in the form of a music blog to cover what was happening in Chicago.
What type of roles were you seeking initially?
Man, I never wanted to be an artist myself. Like I never wanted to be a rapper or a producer or a DJ. Like I always was more fascinated with the executives or like the A&R. Like I was more interested in breaking talent, discovering talent, signing talent, things like that. That was more of what my passion was.
Right. In 2007, I mean, that's pretty early in the blog era. What made you decide to do that, and how did you start figuring out, just that initial that starting process and starting to get that initial traction?
Yeah, so I was pretty fresh out of college. I had been out of college for like a couple years, and I had a job, and it was a cool job. It was a corporate job, and I was like going in every day, and I didn't, it wasn't what I wanted to do. My passion was always in music, and like around that time, music blogs kind of started popping up.
Mm-hmm.
So I was reading them every day. Like I would read them. I would take the train to work, and this is back when you couldn't like read them on your phone. You'd have to print out like articles and like read them. So I would like read all these bloggers like posts about different things, and I'm like, well, these people don't necessarily know any more than I do. I could probably do this. I wasn't a trained journalist. I didn't go to school for that or anything like that. But it was more of a creative way of writing. It wasn't like your traditional journalism, right? It was a different way of doing it and composing and putting paragraphs together. It was like a creative way to write. I'm like, well, I can do this, and I know, all this random information, and I know a lot of, everything about the artists that they're writing about, so I could do this. And at the same time, living in Chicago, I was very frustrated with the lack of coverage that the artists here were getting. Like, of course, if you were Common, Lupe, Fiasco, Twista, or Kanye, you were getting coverage if you were one of those four. But if you weren't one of those four, you really weren't getting any coverage at the time. Like,
Right.
Maybe a couple here and there, like Do or Die or something like that. But they were kind of really before the blog era. And it was crazy to me that Chicago is, this third largest market in the United States. And it's not getting the love. Like, it just didn't make any sense to me. So I just started covering what was happening here. And this is around the same time that, like, the Cool Kids started to blow up, and Hollywood Hold and Mike Terr and Mano and Kid Sister and Flostradamus and Mickey Halstead, Bump J. There was a lot of artists that were coming up at that time that I just felt like needed some national, needed some coverage that weren't getting it.
Right. Hey, can you just talk about the name? Well, because I actually lived in Chicago for about a year and some change after business.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was about a year and almost a year and a half after business school. I worked for a consulting company. I stayed right in the West Loop,
Okay.
right in the presidential towers down there. But obviously the name is I believe a play off Lakeshore Drive. So it's or is it not?
No, it is 100%. And like, actually, it ran, a famous, it's not really a highway, it kind of is, but it's called Lakeshore Drive. It's on the lakefront. It's one of the most iconic, things in Chicago. And it didn't mean anything. Like, I wasn't saying anybody was fake or this was fake. It was just like a play on words that I thought was funny. And I started using it. And it ended up kind of being a gift and a curse because, like, forever people have asked me about that name. Why did you call it that? What does it mean? It's catchy. It's like, you hear it once and you'll always remember it. So
right,
that's how it happened.
So, and then, so the focus has always, and it still is, like Chicago, Midwest hip hop.
Yeah. Yeah. It was strictly Chicago at first, but then, like, probably around 2011, 12, something like that, we expanded it to start covering the whole Midwest. So, because I still feel like the Midwest as a whole is the most underserved region in hip hop, despite having, some of the biggest stars, Eminem, Kanye, Nelly, those are, three of the biggest stars ever in hip hop. But despite that, I feel like the Midwest really hasn't gotten the love that a lot of other regions have.
So talk about just deciding to focus on that niche, some of the good things and maybe some of the bad things, or, if there are any bad things in terms of making the decision to focus specifically on a region.
Well, that's another one of those things that was like a gift and a curse, because when I was first starting out, people were like, this is never going to work. Nobody's ever going to care. Nobody cares about Chicago that much. Nobody cares about the flyover states. The Midwest, people want to call it the flyover states, right? And they think that, this is just consumers. We are not the creators of culture. We strictly consume it. We don't make the culture. Like, we harvest, the corn, but then we got to go elsewhere to sell it. Basically is kind of how people looked at it, which I always thought otherwise. But it was difficult getting started because there was not a lot of things happening here as far as like major label artists. Like, if you go to LA, it was like a lot of major label artists, a lot of stuff happening. New York has a lot of major label artists. Of course, around this time, Houston was still kind of hot in the South. And of course, Atlanta has been hot for the past 15 years. So they're always a factor. So it just seems like people weren't really checking for the Midwest like that. But on the other hand, when people needed something, especially if they needed something in Chicago, I would be one of the first people they would contact, still to this day. And if people needed it, brands needed it, labels needed it, A&Rs, whoever, most of the time they would be hitting me first when they would come into town. Right.
Can you talk about how you decided who to cover, and even now, like, how do you decide like which artists to support, and which artists maybe need to wait a little bit more in their development? Because I'm sure everybody, or tons of artists in the Midwest, want coverage or want some type of exposure. That's what they all want. So how do you decide, like, you know, who to highlight, and you know, who needs to wait a little bit?
Well, you know, I don't really blog anymore, but
Right.
like when it was, you know, the height of it, and everybody was, you know, the blog era was, you know, this big thing, and everybody was on blogs, and that's how artists were getting broken. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it was more so about, you know, I approached it like a fan. I always approach everything that I do like a fan, because that's really what I was a super fan. And I
Mm-hmm.
always thought I had pretty decent taste. I thought I had good taste, but like, um, you know, looking at it as a fan is like, okay, this is what I like, and I think this is, you know, unique. I think this is different. I think this person has an original sound. You know, I'm still from that old mindset where like I like originality. I don't like stuff to all sound the same or be the same. You know, sometimes that's going to happen within a scene. You're going to have a group or a crew of people who are all kind of the same sound and same, you know, same type of vibe. But you know, I always like different things, and that's what I was drawn to. You know, everybody doesn't have to be like the best lyricist, but they might have something else. And then also there's stuff that might be moving that I'm not necessarily a fan of, but I see that it's moving, and I know that other people will be a fan of it. So I think you have to find that. I always had to find that balance of, okay, this is what I like. Personally, it may not be the most commercially successful thing, like, but I think it's unique, and I think it's different, and I think it deserves a spotlight. But then there'd be other stuff that's like, okay, this is going to sell a lot, or this is going to get traffic or attention, even though it's not necessarily my cup of tea.
Right, right. Can you I don't see, because there's a lot of platforms, and you know, people that have made their platforms kind of about them, right? Like they named it maybe after them.
Yeah.
And I can see, you know, some positive, especially in this day and age, you know, how it might serve somebody better to like increase their like public profile. Didn't seem like that was your thing. You definitely are a fan of the craft, fan of hip hop, fan of the culture. Did you ever entertain that? Like, because I always heard of Faith Tour Drive, and I even knew your name, but I never could place a face to it until, you
Right.
know, I mean, I guess it's been a while now, um, but like, what are your thoughts around that? Because I think a lot more people are inclined to just make their platform about them.
Right, right.
Nowadays.
And I think, but that's probably what works now, right? I mean, we're in the age of, you know, the social media star, and you know, different people that have, you know, they're a star on Instagram or on Twitter or Twitch or whatever the platform may be. But I never wanted to make it about me. Obviously, as time go on, you become more noteworthy, and you might have to step out of your shadow. But initially, I kind of played it like, you know, Ghostface. Like I was like, I didn't want people to know who I was. I didn't even put my real name. I just put AB on the post. You never saw a picture of me anywhere until, you know, it kind of grew to the point where people started finding out who I was. But I really just wanted the taste and the knowledge and the writing and the coverage to speak for itself. You know, I wanted to cover what was happening in the scene, and I wanted people to trust my voice, not necessarily, you know, make it about me or what I look like or who I was. Because at the time, that was, to me, that was kind of corny. I think now it's more about branding yourself and you know, making it all about yourself and your personal brand. But at the time, I was just trying to build, you know, something that people could trust. And I think sometimes when people make it all about themselves, they kind of lose that.
Right.
Not anymore, but you know,
Right.
14, 15 years ago, you know, that was kind of the case.
Well, I think it happened. Well, my personal opinion is I think it happens today too. I think you got to really watch. Yeah, I guess you just really need to know, you know, have that conversation with yourself about like, why are you in this? You know, and I guess, you know, chart your path accordingly.
And it was really like, I think a lot of people do it for clout or to get famous now, but you really couldn't I mean, you could maybe get some notoriety back then, but it wasn't like people were becoming like huge internet stars because of their blogs. Like maybe if they had some kind of celebrity blog, like Perez Hilton, that might have been like one of the only blogger people knew of back then. But yeah, people like, you know, it wasn't about that really. It was more about, you know, writing about what you loved and the culture and all that stuff, you know.
Right. And so like every industry, pretty much every position, like our industry goes through shakeups and, technological advances and things like that. We have to pivot, we have to adapt. Obviously, blogs aren't as powerful as they once were. So you now have this platform. Like, what do you do to kind of pivot, adjust, stay relevant, make a living? How did you manage that transition, and what all are you doing today?
Yeah, I mean, I noticed, I would say probably around 6 years ago that, all right, the blogosphere is now changing. Like, this is not the only thing, places that weren't necessarily even blogs, they might have been magazines, or they were, different media publications. They started getting VC money, and they started, scaling, and they were getting big staffs. So like, how could one, it would be like me, basically, I always had a bunch of writers, but the other full-time person I had was Ty Howard. And it was like basically two of us, and you're competing against a Complex or a Fader or Noisy or somebody like that who have hundreds or 30 or whatever employees with all this, people dedicated to this, doing social media, writing the posts, doing the long form. And, they got a lot of money. They can pay the top people to do it. So I noticed that started changing. And like, a lot of the bloggers started getting poached to go to other places. Like the independent bloggers who were all about, oh yeah, we're changing the industry, we're this, we're that. They started getting picked up by streaming companies, and they started getting picked up by labels and bigger publications. So the landscape started changing. It was like, here come the big, these big conglomerates that you really, you can't compete with. But I could on like a breaking talent. But then eventually the talent gets broken, and they are, the bigger platforms start dangling the carrot, and they all go towards that. And it's like, all right, you're no longer getting the exclusives. We're going to give this to Complex or whoever, because it's a much bigger publication, which you can't be mad at that. I mean, people have to do what's right for them in there. And we know in the music business, there's really no loyalty, and people are just trying to get to the next level. So, you gotta get over that. But so I started noticing that, and I also started noticing that like the money that I was making purely on like advertising and stuff like that was getting smaller and smaller. And it was like, all right, you got to pivot to video. You got to start doing video, and you got to start doing this. And, they were just trying to, dictating the rules of what you have to do to make money. And I'm like, okay, I got to start doing other stuff. So that's when I started like doing events, consulting for other brands, working with Adidas and working with Hennessy. And, I partnered up with Red Bull around that time, like 2013-ish. They brought me on to curate and help build their Sound Select program, which helped independent artists, get heard and perform on larger platforms. And that took me to around the world, doing shows around the world and working with them. I did like 30 shows probably in Chicago with them, and did stuff in LA and overseas. And that was a really great experience. And it's like, once you start working with one brand and you do a good job, then others start calling. So, that became a part of my business. And then I start doing a radio show on Shade 45 every week called The Drive. It's been on air for about 5 years now. Where we just play nothing but Midwest music for 2 hours. Me and Ty curate the first hour, and then the second hour we always get a different DJ from a different market in the Midwest to come on and play like what's hot in their region, because they're not getting that radio love. Apple brought me on to curate their new Chicago playlist. I started doing some management. The first artist that I took on, the first artist that I managed was a long time ago, Lucky. But we didn't work together that long. But then Valet, who I started managing like 3 years ago, who went on, signed to Good Music, Def Jam, just got a gold single earlier this year with Womp Womp. So, it was about diversification and doing a lot of different things, man. Because you really got to have like 20 jobs to get one salary now.
Right. No, and I think for artists, it's the same way. Like, your industry is going to get shaken up, whether it's, going from CDs to downloads to streams. Like, you got to have multiple revenue streams in order to kind of maintain your business. I think oftentimes artists think they're alone in this, but it's like really every business kind of goes through these shakeups.
Yeah.
The stuff,
especially music though.
For sure. But to be able to pivot into all of these things, I would guess that the main thing that allowed you to do that was the relationships you built. Is that true, or is it something else?
No, 100%. And it's like, I think I personally, a lot of people will be like, man, I don't care. I'll burn bridges because I know how to swim, or they'll say something stupid ass quote like that. But I think the worst thing you can do is burn bridges with people, especially people that have helped you along the way or you've done business with. My thing is always, all right, it's my word is what I have. My reputation is what I have in this industry.
Right.
I just saw so many people from Chicago or otherwise get tripped up or fail or shoot way up to the top, only to come back down. And they shit on everybody on the way up, and on the way down they're begging those same people that they shit on. And that's never really been my thing. I'm not like a mean person or rude, or with any kind of success I've had, I've always maintained a lot of humbleness and treat everybody with respect. Because you really don't know who's going to be where one. I mean, you should just be nice in general, especially if you're lucky enough to work in this industry and make a living on it, because so many people dream to do this and don't. And that's one of the things that always bothers me, is like people can't wait to get on to start being assholes and shit on people and start thinking that they're above other people. It's like, no, this is a job, and like you should be appreciative of this. But maintaining relationships is so important and valuable. I always say that's probably number one, because you might have helped somebody a long time ago when they needed it, and then one day you might need it, because this industry is peaks and valleys. You're always going to have ups and downs. For the most part. I mean, for the most part, hopefully, you can maintain a pretty cool level, but there's stuff that's going to happen that you can't plan for, like the pandemic. This messed up basically everybody's business in music. Some people more than others, but it's changed everything.
Right.
So relationships are important. Keeping your word, doing good business, not putting people on, bullshit contracts and ripping off people, and doing anything for a nickel and dime, because not all money is good money when it comes to that.
Right. I'm sure of quite a few of them, but is there any artist that stands out as somebody that's been like super solid, maintain their word, or just really understands like the importance of maintaining great relationships?
In Chicago, people that Chance and I have always had a great relationship, and he's always been good to me. I've always been good to him, and I watched him come all the way. Same with like Vic Mensa and Dirk, and most people have been cool, for the most part, and showed love. But it's the industry, so you never know what's going to happen. But I'm happy for anybody that came through the fake short drive system, or somebody that we covered early on that went on to become a huge star. The cool kids. They helped me get my star. People like Lupe Fiasco. Lupe helped me early on. No ID. People like that have, they showed Legendary Trackster. Like they showed me support early on, and we've been cool ever since, and helped each other along the way.
So you deciding to get into management. I think a lot of people that know as much about the industry as you do, know stay away from management. They know that it comes with oftentimes a lot of stress and a lot of stuff you don't want to deal with, because they've seen it firsthand. What made you decide that, okay, management is something that my skill set could probably benefit an artist and help an artist get to that next level, for sure. But what made you decide that you wanted to deal with everything that comes with management?
It was just at a point in my career where it was like, okay, what am I going to do next? I had just celebrated 10 years, and a lot of things were changing. The blog world was changing. Some opportunities that I had come and gone, and some things had run its course. And it's like, all right, what's next? It's always like every few years, it's like, okay, what's next? I've done this. I've conquered this. What else can I do? Do I want to start a label? I start weighing it. Do I really want to do that? Which I've always toyed with, but I've actually never done. But then one day I just heard Valet's music by accident. It just came on like my YouTube shuffle, and he had this song called Shell that was really unique, and it just grabbed my attention. I watched the video and I watched it again, and I watched it 100 times, and like I was like, okay, this is different. I really like this. I think I can do something with this. And instead of like trying to sign it and like, you know, do that, I was just like, man, let me manage this guy. I like him. We had a really long conversation. It went well.
So you didn't know him prior to hearing it on your YouTube shuffle?
No, I'd heard his name, and we had posted his music before. Ty had more so kind of posted his music, and I was familiar with him, but we had never had a conversation or met face to face. And I'd never really listened to his music. But I liked it. I thought it was super unique, and I'm like, I think I can help amplify this.
So, well, I want to go back to the label stuff too and talk about that. But do you feel, because sometimes I hear managers say often that you gotta love the music,
right?
I don't necessarily agree, but I would want to see if you agree with that, and then I'll explain why I don't necessarily.
And I probably should, and I might have more artists on my roster if I felt that way. But I have to love your music. I have to really be passionate about it, because if not, I really just can't. I can't go to the fire for you. Like, I can't just jump through hoops and spend all, because do management, as you know, takes a lot of time. Like that will eat up everything, and you got to put everything on hold for that. Your other business stuff, your family, your kids. All that shit has to go to the side if you're managing an artist, because it's all about them. And you might get a call today that says, all right, you guys we got an opportunity for you guys in LA tomorrow, but you got to get on this flight today to be out. Like, you always have to just be ready in that. But like, I got to love it. I got to love the music. I got to love you. And that's an issue, because a lot of times there's stuff that I don't like that will sell more and be more successful, but it's just hard for me to do that.
Yeah. And I guess it might be a game of semantics, but like, I think that I personally feel you have to believe in the music, you got to love the person, and you got to love the challenge and the business. But I'm trying to stay away from managing any more music artists. I've been working with comedians over the past couple of years, and that's just been great for me.
How much better is it to do that than manage a musician?
Well, I'm sure you're gonna find a comedian that's just as off as some artists. Like I'm sure it just comes with the creative space. But for me, like with the cast that I'm working with, it's more my age. We went to college together. There's been a relationship for 20 years, so it's different. But just from other comedian managers that I've talked to now, it just seems just a little bit more level-headedness that I'm sure you can find in some artists.
But you're probably not having to go bang on doors to get them up, to wake them to catch a flight, to get, do all that type of stuff that you don't necessarily enjoy.
Yeah, it's probably a little different. That's probably why I enjoy it more. But yeah, man, management is not an easy thing. I think there needs to be more people that are as smart as you, that have the experience like you in it. But it's such a tough thing. It's hard to get your types of folks in management. Right. I know a lot of people running away from management that I think are smart, that I think need to be in there, because it's such an important role, although it's very thankless at times.
Yeah, I saw somebody say management was the ghetto. They're like, management's the ghetto. Somebody said that on Twitter the other day, and I was cracking up. I'm like, yeah, it can be.
Yeah, it's tough. So when you were thinking about the label, why not? Because I feel like at this point, anybody with a platform can start a label, and that's worth way more than the money they'll use to start the label.
Yeah. One of my older homies in the industry, good friend, was like kind of told me this, and I won't say who, because I don't want them to get in trouble. But they were like, man, how many artists do you hear complain about their label? And I'm like, well, probably 90%, 95%.
Yeah, it's not that high.
and he's like, well, how many artists do you hear complain about their manager? And I'm like, you're right, very few. He's like, man, you don't want to deal with that headache. But not that totally dissuaded me from doing it. But it's always like, man, I feel like sometimes a label comes with, you know, all right, you're trying to vulture me out of this money. You're trying to take this money from me, or you owe me more. You owe this and that. I've just seen it happen. Negative things that I've been friends with, or know people that have signed artists to production deals, which I don't necessarily agree with, or like labels, you know, that have invested all this money in an artist, and once they start making money, you know, they think that they should automatically start making money too and not have to pay back what was already invested in them. And then it becomes an issue when people are suing each other. And I'm like, do I really want to deal with that headache? Maybe I wouldn't have to deal with that headache because I don't do bad business. But like, you know, I feel like I got to just get the right mental state to do that.
But yeah, I mean, you never know when you have to deal with that headache. I don't do bad business either, but I got
but that comes with it, right?
Right. But yeah, but I think I think having a label is definitely more protection for the manager because you know you have a bigger stake in the game, and it's, you know, because managers essentially we can get fired at any time, and not, I mean, outside of a sunset clause, you know, you could be left with pretty much that, and you may have been pivotal in, you know, really getting that artist going. So there's a lot of risk in that.
There's so much risk, and it's not for a lot of money either.
Right.
I mean, you know, typical good manager gets 20%, but some, you know, you might take on somebody and be like, all right, I can do 15 or whatever. Like you said, they can cut you, but you might have a sunset clause, but they're going to finesse any way that they can to make sure that you don't get any more of that money, and they're going to be doing deals under the table. So there's no guarantee you're going to get that. Like, when people don't want to go to court, lawyers are expensive, and, you know, all that stuff. So yeah, it's more protection on the label side for sure. But, you know, once the artist decides that, you know, they want out of their deal, they're going to jump on Twitter and, you know, say you're holding their masters for hostage and this and that. And all kind of, it's like, man, I don't know if I want to deal with all
that. I get it. Trust me, I get it. So what in the, because I feel like, you know, I always say this thing, build on small wins, right? And part of that is like, you know, once you have success at something, not resting on it, but looking forward and thinking how you can build on that, right? Because the best time to pivot into something is while you're successful in whatever you're doing now. Instead of like closing it out and then like, you know, then looking around like, okay, what do I do next? Mm-hmm. So what are some of the newer things that you see yourself getting into in the next couple of years that maybe you're not doing now?
Yeah, I'm trying to get more into like movies or TV. You know, I've been approached about doing some podcasting stuff, people bringing me in to consult on different projects like that, or me hosting different things. And, you know, I'm trying to get into more, you know, more of that, more hosting, more talking head. We'll see. I mean, I don't know if I'm 100% want to do that, but I definitely want to do more of that, because now I'm so limited on what, you know, even as a manager, you're very limited on what you can do anymore. Obviously all the stuff and work I did with Live Nation and different, you know, concert promoters and events and all that stuff has come to a halt because there's no shows being done.
Right.
I used to get booked to do a lot of hosting or speaking engagements or panels and things like that. Those are all pretty much done. Everything's online, and, you know, everything's pretty much free now. And, you know, so a lot of stuff that I did, you know, is gone. So it's, you know, about figuring out what to do next, and just trying to move on into different areas. So definitely want to do more entertainment related on like movies and TV, and, you know, taking some of the knowledge that I have here and take, you know, putting it in another area.
For sure. Now I'm currently trying to crack that same code. With the comedians that I'm working with, they've been successful getting in things here and there, but we're trying to produce our own stuff. Is there any, like, do you actively look for artists to manage, or did this one just kind of catch your attention randomly and it just happened? Do you want a roster of artists, or?
I never really wanted a full roster. Like, you know, it would want, you know, because then it's like, you know, I wanted to do one and make sure that it worked. And like, all right, if I can get one to work, then I know I can do this and maybe replicate the formula, or at least I know how to do it and do things differently next time.
Right.
All right. So this one was successful. We got a gold record. That's cool. But what's next? And like, if I took somebody else on, like we discussed earlier, like I gotta love their music, I gotta love them. Now I'm a lot more cautious about who I want to jump in with. You know, I might hear a song or go through a catalog and be like, oh, this person's super talented. But now I gotta study them more without them maybe even knowing. Like I'm gonna watch everything that they're doing and before I jump in and do something again, because they may not have what it takes to go necessarily all the way, or maybe it was fool's gold. Maybe they had one song and one couple songs that I liked, but everything else is not there. And it's like you can get in that, you can take on an artist, and maybe it's all not there. And then like, you know, I want to make sure I can go the distance with them. And then like also having an artist that was signed to a major, it taught me so much about that system. You know, I thought I knew everything about, you know, labels and major labels, and no, I didn't. I thought I did, but I most certainly did not. And you don't until like, that's why it's funny to watch all these A&R armchair A&Rs and people on social media who act like, you know, whether it's Clubhouse now, where you hear all the industry talk, like all these people that think they're experts, and on Twitter too, like, all right, everybody's a fucking expert now in the industry, but like, you really don't even know what it's like until you've seen behind the curtain. Like I've seen behind the curtain, you know, I've looked underneath the hood of the car, I've seen how the engine works, and I know what's messed up about the engine. I know what needs to be fixed. I know what kind of tires they got on there. And that you can't really do that until you get in it. Like you could sit and talk about it all day on Twitter like you're an expert, but until you've seen it, you really don't know. And now I know more about the systems, you know, the you know, not just the labels like a boutique label, but like the machine, the UMG, like how do you navigate that building? Like, you know, and that's type of stuff that I didn't necessarily, I thought I knew before, but I didn't really.
Right. And I think that it's so important, you know, for you to have such a well-rounded experience, because there's so many different ways to chart your path to success in the music industry. Right. Because I think on Clubhouse and these conversations that are like, I think they're some of these industry people, these industry experts, like I hear a lot of gaps in the conversation because they don't really know how a lot of these independents are moving and how
you tweeted that. Did you tweet that like a day or two ago?
I probably did. It's one of my hot rants over the past couple of weeks. Like,
and you said, sorry to interrupt, but I think you said, I thought it was really smart. I think you said something to the effect of, all right, you're just getting the major label experience on here.
Right.
Right. You're not getting I think you said that right. Am I?
Yeah. Okay. Because there's just a lot of blinds. Like if all you had is a major label experience, you know, and you've missed how these independent artists are being successful these days, you probably don't even know about some of the revenue streams that we're capitalizing on. You don't know how the business model set up. You think one way. And I just think, not that your input isn't valid, I just think we need to round this conversation out so that whoever's listening can get the full picture of how they could potentially set up their business, as opposed to somebody telling you, you know, from one area, like what's most important and what you need to be focusing on. Because it could be a totally different game. Like the artists have all types of different revenue streams, and everybody's revenue mix could look a lot different. Like your artist, Valet, you know, he makes his money a certain way, you know, certain percentage here, certain percentage here. I'll talk to another artist, they might be heavily weighted towards merch, you know, and that's what they care about.
Right.
And everything they do is to sell more merch, and that's okay because that works for them. But anyway, so I think your experience now having that major label, I mean, I think you just are perfect for the role that you're in. So so as long as you can take being a manager, as long as you have positive experiences, I think we need more people like you, you know, in those positions.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, and I think you know, we have experience, and to me that's the best teacher. Like being around for a long time and being able to survive in this industry is very difficult. Like we've both seen a lot of people that have come and gone, people that have had tremendous success that are here today, gone tomorrow. And like, man, you gotta really study everything, and you gotta watch what worked for other people and move accordingly. And like sometimes you can learn the most from the stuff that you messed up on, so you know not to do it again. But sure. You know, I think now it's really about you know, your team and who you have in your corner and like who you have working for you. Because one of the craziest things about the major labels and I'm not knocking everybody in the major label because there's great people at majors. There's not so great people. There's people that don't love it, that don't love hip hop, they don't love the culture necessarily. They're just getting a check. They don't breathe. They're not living and breathing this. But you get in there and they're relying on you to do everything. You know, they're like, all right, so how do we grow this Instagram account? How can we get him to post more on Instagram? How can we get him to be more active on social media? And it's like, why are you telling us this? We could do that. We don't need you to tell us this. Like, this is your game plan. Your marketing plan is for him to post on his social media. We could have done that without you.
Right. But we eventually signed a distribution deal with Warner, and you know, I thought it was a positive thing. But one of the time I did have a conversation with them, and I was like, well, what is it do you guys think that we need to progress and to grow? And they were like, you need to spend more money. And I was like, all right, we have the money, like we're doing well. Like where though? Like just spend money? Like
how? How do you want me to spend this money?
Right. Like you telling me to spend more money is not helpful at all and sounds ridiculously wasteful.
Right.
Like, you know, tell me where I should direct. And they didn't really have an answer after that. They were like, okay, I have some ideas. Maybe we do need to put more fuel on the fire here and there. But the fact that the first thing you guys tell me is just to spend more money, because that's all they've been doing. Like, because of the way that, you know, albums are recouped, they've never really been on the hook for expenses, right? So they are allowed to just spend wastefully and never be held accountable. So I'm not surprised at the suggestion.
Right. Yeah. Because they don't think like it's like, okay, you need this. Oh, yeah. Well, you need to pay somebody $800 for some cover art that, you know, you could have found somebody else to do, or that was better, that would do it for $100 or $250 for a single that doesn't even matter. But they just overpay for everything. It's, oh, you want to fly 6 people to LA for a video? Okay, cool. Yeah, you guys can fly 6 people out, and we'll get you 6, you know, 6 hotel rooms at the W or whatever. It's like, all right, you guys give me the budget.
Right.
Let me hire my people to do what I need them to do, because I have better people anyway, I think, and I can spend this money more efficiently.
Yeah, that is one thing that independent artists learn to do way better than major label. Like if you started from the bottom and you didn't have money, you learned how to stretch a dollar like very far and to get a lot done with less. So I think that is something that needs to be kept true and inside the team. Like don't ever lose that, no matter how big the budgets get. Like you can waste a lot of money on things, and labels are proving this time and time again. You mentioned in what you said when you were looking for artists to manage, you said that the artist didn't think that the artist, like sometimes you don't think an artist has what it takes to go the distance. For you, what are some of those characteristics? What are you looking for in an artist?
You know, I think you got to be now, especially in this pandemic world, like you have to know how to work social media now. Like, and you have to work at a pace that is different than even it was 3 years ago. You know, not that I always agree with putting out more content. And I think this is what people got mad at the guy from Spotify, the CEO of Spotify or whatever, who was telling people like they need to put out more content, and everybody got pissed at him. They were like, you shouldn't be telling artists what to do so you could pay him pennies or whatever. But I'm like, maybe he was misquoted on that, but like that, I think he's just saying that this is the model now that people are following. People are putting out more and more content to stay relevant. Because as you can see now, with albums dropping on Thursday night, you get like one day of conversation on the timeline, maybe a weekend, and then it's gone by Monday. Like it's something else. The albums are getting, you know, cycled in faster and faster and faster. So people are dropping more frequently. It's like something could be the biggest thing in the world on Friday all day, but by Tuesday of next week, nobody's even talking about it anymore. And everybody's asking, oh, when's your next project dropping? When's your next project dropping? So like you have to move at the industry's pace. You know, some artists don't have to do that. Some of them can keep people's attention and just drop yearly or everywhere. But most artists aren't going to have that luxury anymore.
Right.
So, you know, people that are going to be active and work and be self-starters online and engage with their fans and be ready to, you know, maybe look uncool or have to do stuff that they don't want to do, going live or talking with their fans or being on Twitter and actually engaging. You know, all that stuff is important now. And especially when people can't see you. Like, you can't go to cities anymore and go perform a show and do meet and greets and, you know, stand outside in the venue in the parking lot and talk to people and shake hands. And you know, you can't do that right now in this world. So, like, you have to be good at social media, and you have to figure out how to walk that fine line of, you know, not being overexposed and not doing too much, but also like staying in people's faces enough that they don't forget you. And just having good music. Just because you did a couple good songs doesn't mean that you could consistently do it. You know, so many times, especially like in the blog world, somebody would submit like one really dope song and I'd be like, oh my God, this person's amazing. And you would post their song, and then they'll never have another good song ever again that even comes close to that. But then you're stuck posting their music for years and years and years. And if you know, miss something that they drop, then it's, oh, fuck you, Andrew in Hollywood, he's not posting my music anymore. So it's like, it's just a lot of shit like that, right? Just because you do one thing good one time doesn't mean you can do it forever.
Right.
And, you know, you want to make sure that, okay, is this person somebody that can really, you know,
yeah, that, I mean, we've said this time and time again, but that consistency is crucial. That willingness to engage and just be present and stay in conversations. You know, that can get tiring. I understand it, but you have to have the willingness and the ability to do that, like to stay.
Yeah, we got to do it. We have to do it too, and we're behind the scenes. You see us, we got to do the same shit.
Yeah, nah, I mean, I'm here every week. I'm here talking to people every week. Our podcast has not missed a week in 70 weeks. Like, we have to keep the conversation going, even when we don't feel like it, even when we roll out of bed and like, man, I really don't, you know. But luckily I like doing, like, this is no problem for me. Like, I don't mind just chopping it up, you know. But artists need to have that same mentality. One more question before I get some questions from the audience. So this is just something that I've seen. I've never, this is my first time, like, you know, since the MEC started, like I never like interviewed people or talked to people. This is my first time in it. But you know, obviously artists have more leverage now with social media. And I think it's changed the tone of like interviews. Does it frustrate you that like sometimes the interviewer has to be more concerned about the relationship than like getting a good interview or asking a tougher question? Like, sometimes it seems like questions aren't asked because they're trying to preserve the relationship with the artist so that they come back again, or that they don't say anything negative about it on social media.
100%. Like, and that's part of it. Or like, you know, people start calling you like Vlad or something like that. Like, people start, you know, saying, oh, this guy's a cop. He's asking like questions about. So it's like, you have to be very delicate. It's like, you don't want to, you know, start going overboard because people will be like, question your motives. Like, especially me as like a white guy, it's like, yo, I'm not going to be asking some incriminating shit because I don't want people, you know, thinking I'm even have anything to do with, you know, being the cop. I don't want that shit on me, you know, not at all. But like, and then also like, you can't give a fair assessment of, I'll give you just like, even an example, like, I live in Chicago, dude. I couldn't write something negative about somebody. They'll come find me. And this place is no joke. So like, if I have something bad to say, I probably just am not going to say it. Like, if I don't like your music, I'm just not going to say anything. I'm not going to get online and shit on it. I'm just going to be quiet about it. So I think, you know, you have to be cognizant, especially in a world where everybody knows you. Like, back in the day, you could write a negative review about an artist or a scathing review. Nobody could ever find you. Nobody knew what you look like. It wasn't like your face was out there. Now you could find people. You know where they are. You might see them at an event. You might bump into them someday. So it could be an issue. So like, this world we live in now has given us, you know, different consequences for your actions. And I've seen people get run up on. I've seen, You know, people have altercations, getting faces of bloggers or different people that have said things about them on the internet. I've been at events and, you know, seen people get checked for things that they've done or things that they've said. I've seen conscious rappers run up on people and you know, do stuff. So it's like, you know, there are consequences to your actions. So you have to be mindful of that. But also, like, I think that there's a way to have these conversations and ask maybe tough questions without, you know, being negative about it. I think sometimes it's about how you present the questions and how you know, that's part of being a good interviewer. It's like, okay, how can you take the person that you're interviewing off guard? So they're like not feeling like you're coming at them, antagonizing them and asking them these questions, but it's more of a cool conversation, kind of like how we're having right now. Like we're having just a chill, normal conversation. So my guard is down. So you could ask me something I might not have the problem answering now, but if it was a heated debate, then it might be taken a different way. So, you know, it's just finding that balance, but you're for sure not going to get people that are going to ask a lot of the tough questions anymore just because of the consequences and, you know, messing up relationships for sure.
Right. Cool, man. Well, let's knock out a couple questions from the audience. There was a question before. Somebody submitted $5. You definitely don't have to donate to the BeatStars channel, but it did highlight, like that comment turned green, so it caught my attention. So we'll ask this one. He wanted to ask a question. He wanted to start a music streaming channel on YouTube. How would I go about using BeatStars? That's not something that we would answer on this. I'm not even sure. So I'm sure BeatStars appreciates your donation, but that's not the time for that one. All right. So if you do want to ask a question, no matter what platform you're on, just put it in the comment section and I'll grab a couple before. I know people were asking questions earlier. Let me just scroll up. Do you think COVID will eliminate the need for an artist to have an agent since no live shows are taking place? Will managers take on the role of booking artists for TV movie gigs if they want that?
Man, you know, I would hope that agents don't get eliminated because they do a lot of great work. Regardless of, you know, maybe you feel a certain way about a agent. Like some people don't need agents, some people don't want them. They do everything in house, and that's fine. But I know a lot of really great agents and people that do work, and I'd hate to see those, you know, jobs get eliminated. And I do feel for them. You know, talk about a business that made a lot of money that now is making no money. But I think I don't have an answer for that. I mean, I think eventually shows are going to come back.
Yeah.
How and when, we don't know. You know, people are saying at first I remember it seemed like 2021 seemed like it was so far away, but we're knocking on 2021's door and I don't see an end in sight. So a lot of people are 2022, who knows? But, you know, the role of an agent might change, but you're always going to need people to do that. And I think they have relationships that a lot of managers don't have.
Right.
Like I know a lot of people, but I may not know somebody at a TV network that an agent knows, and I'm sure you have some insight to that as well, Dan.
Yeah, no. So I mean, I think we'll eventually get back to doing shows, so the agent's not going anywhere. And I believe in California, you're legally not even allowed technically to be like an agent and a manager. Like you're not allowed. I've never seen anybody get called because a lot of people are doing it. Obviously, I've never seen anybody get tied up legally because of that, but I'm pretty sure that it, like, legally you're not supposed to do it, at least in California. But I think agents will still be necessary. We're just going through a real tough and unique time, and you know we'll get back to doing shows eventually. Let's see. What is the thing that you consider the most important for having career sustainability outside of protecting your relationships?
Being consistent is important. Being, you know, consistently dropping music, good music. You know, keeping your fans happy. Not. You know, you always want to continue to try to expand and reach more people. But also keeping your core fan base happy. I think now there's so many niches. Like it used to be, there was only like a finite amount of famous people, you know, in the world or in music or that you knew. But now there's so many different ways to get to be famous, and there's different mediums where people can do it. You don't necessarily need to go after everybody, but it's always good to expand But it's good to find your niche and really hone in on it and keep those people happy. I think a lot of times there's artists that only serve a certain niche and have an X amount of fans, but they can live on those fans forever, and they can live a lot better than some of your some of these major label artists that you think are like making a lot of money, and a lot of times they're not, because they're not making any money on their music, especially right now, because the label's making all the money on the music unless they own their shit.
Right. So what I would say to that, and there's another question that said, what are the keys for artists to make money? And I think this answers for both of those questions. It's being able to build and facilitate a community. Like if you build a community and you are intentionally doing things to grow that community and engage with that community and getting the community to engage with each other, that opens up so many opportunities for, long-term sustainable revenue. So that's what I would focus on. And I think we mentioned this last week when Justin Hunt was on. I think that's the key for a lot of brands, brands outside of music, just to be able to foster and build a community. There's a lot of value in that. So I would be intentional about building a community.
Yeah. I think we had a very similar answer, but you said it much better than I did.
But I think so there's some artists that just do that really well. Yeah. Right? Like they host contests, they just do certain things to like get people to engage with each other, or they have like taglines and the merch is on point, so that when you see other person in the merch, like you might say something to that person because that there's a connection there. Like there's there's definitely a lot of value in that. All right, let's do one more and then we'll let Andrew go about his day because he's a busy man. Do you need any freelance designers at Fake Shore Drive?
No, but thank you.
That can't be the ending question. We need a better question than that. How do you tell an artist you're working with to work their social media successfully? Do you have any general advice on successful management of social media?
I think what you said really nailed it on the head. Like building a community and not just offering something, like some kind of game, some kind of information, something that makes it worthwhile, and not just bullshit, like not just drama, not just I'm getting on here to argue with somebody else and talk shit, but because the sad thing is that's always going to get the most attention, like drama and negativity. That's people thrive on that. So that's always going to get the most attention. But like, I think maybe some of the reason why I've been able to, continue to grow or have success is because I try to offer knowledge or information, just like you. Like I try to have, maybe it's a fact, maybe it's a rap fact, or, something that I like that I can share, or some information, some knowledge, which I think is more beneficial than, some people have built careers on just getting online and shitting on people, but I don't think, I think that ends up costing you in the long run. But just trying to build community and adding value.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and this is probably saying the same thing a different way, just being interesting. I think if you really have a command of the story and the brand, like if you really know your brand and you really know the story that you're trying to tell, it shouldn't be hard to come up with what to post on social media.
Right.
Right. Because if obviously the MEC, we're about music business education. So we stay in our lane and we're consistent with it. And we have these sessions to cut highlights from. We have our podcast that we record every week to cut highlights from. Like we're not starving for anything to post when I wake up in the morning. Like I kind of know what we're going to post, and then I divvy up the days between me and Payne. So it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier process. But I think that's the piece where artists don't, we're understanding their own brand and that the story that they're trying to tell, and a compelling story at that, I think they don't even know. So that's why they get confused with what to do on social media and have a hard time being consistent.
Yeah. Right. 100%.
So, Cool, man. We'll let people know where they can find you. I definitely enjoyed this conversation. Appreciate you joining us, but let people know where they can find you if they want to follow you on social media.
Yeah, so you can check me out on at Fake Shore Drive on Twitter and Instagram, or Facebook is at Fake Shore Drive on basically every platform for the most part. Or if you need to talk to me about something a little more in depth, you can hit me at fakeshoredrive@gmail.com. Same email that I've had since 2007. Kept it all the way real with that. But yeah, I'm online a lot. You can find me. And I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much for having me on, man. It's been a great convo, and I'm happy to come back anytime.
No, I definitely will follow up on that because I want to have you back because I think again your experience is super valuable and you've seen the game from so many different perspectives. So you have insight that I think a lot of that a lot of people don't have. And this is our first time actually talking to each other. I don't know if people knew that, but this is my first time actually talking to Andrew. But I knew just from the quality of stuff that he does and the people that associate with him, or just the people that like interact with you on Twitter, because we probably share a lot of the same contacts.
Yeah.
I can make the assumption that he's a solid cat just by association. And then knowing what he's done even more reinforces that that there's a lot of knowledge and that you've done a lot of good work. So thanks again, man. I'll definitely be in touch. For everybody else, you have another session on Thursday with DJ Payne 1, and then I'll be back next Monday. I believe we have Dan Runcie coming back from Trapital, so that should be another good one. So cool. Andrew, man, I'll be in touch. Thank you, man.
Much love. And thank you to everybody that tuned in to watch. Thank you, guys. We appreciate it. Peace.
Indeed. Peace.